To the United States now, where Democratic presidential candidates fanned out across Iowa this weekend for a frenzy of rallies and last-ditch speeches, with just days to go before the rural state kicks off the nominating process. The former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden focused on his electability as he campaigned in Iowa, declaring he could beat President Donald Trump like a drum in November's election. Now, Biden's campaign was, however, disrupted by a group of detractors who reduced his speech to a comedy show.
Biden's campaign was not all politics. The interruptions were, however, a brief comic relief from all the serious talk. One of the men stood as Biden was getting underway with his speech and asked the former vice president for some advice.
And at a moment like this, a president's credibility is very much in need. And so when it comes to credibility, President Trump's bank account is thoroughly bankrupt because he lies about everything, no matter how big or small it is. And the American people and people around the world will find it harder and harder to believe what he says about this virus, which is going to be, look, what president's words matter. They matter, no matter who the president is. And at times of fear and concern, people need to have confidence in the word of a president.
Public opinion polls show a tight race amongst the Democrats for the right to take on Trump in November. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and Biden are in a dead heat for a first place, with U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren and former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg close behind. The final campaigning before Monday's caucuses took an extra urgency as Sanders, Warren and fellow senators have been stuck in Washington serving as jurors in Trump's impeachment trial and are due to return by Monday morning for closing arguments.
Several of my colleagues in this race think it's naive of me to think we can bring the country together. I refuse to accept the notion that it's a forever war between Democrats and Republicans. It's not impossible. I've done it my whole career. They say I don't understand the new Republican Party. Well, you just got a glimpse of it. I understand the new Republican Party. I've been the object of their affection for a long while now. I wonder why. I wonder why. Oh, God love him, as my mother would say.
38-year-old Buttigieg has spent the last year successfully courting Democratic donors and voters in the predominantly white states of Iowa and New Hampshire, where polls show the Harvard-educated military veteran in the top tier of candidates a week before the caucuses.
Well, for more on the Democrats' nominating contest, I'm joined live from Council Bluffs in Iowa by our U.S. correspondent, Kate Fisher. Kate, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Just how significant is Iowa for the Democrats? Is it really a flashpoint state to move Joe Biden's campaign forward?
Yeah, it actually really is. You wouldn't think it. I'm here on a sleepy Sunday afternoon here in Iowa. There aren't many people around. This state does not have a large population. We've driven along miles and miles of empty roads. Yet this state does carry a huge significance for US elections, because it is the first time that the American people get to make their point heard, get to vote in an election. Yes, it's only the people who live here in Iowa, but it is the first test for these candidates to see how well they're doing, how popular they really are amongst ordinary Americans. So although it's a very small population, and critics argue that it's not really truly representative of America, it's predominantly white and rural, but it still holds that really important place in US presidential elections. The first time that these candidates will know how well their message is going down with ordinary Americans.
Now, if for argument's sake Joe Biden loses Iowa and New Hampshire to yet another top contender, Bernie Sanders, just how likely would that damage his electability argument, which is raised earlier on in Iowa?
It would be a huge blow to the Biden campaign because, as you said, a lot of what he is campaigning on is that he is well known, people like him, people know who he is, that name recognition that is so important because, of course, he was the vice president during Barack Obama's time as president. And if he can't show a strong result here in Iowa, then that will be a big disappointment for him and his team. And he will have to find a new talking point, a new selling point, if you like, if that doesn't work in this state. But at the moment, it really is too close to call. There is much rumour and counter-rumour among the top four candidates, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, then Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg. It's really too close to call. I was at a Pete Buttigieg rally just last night here in Iowa. His supporters were very committed, very loud. They were saying that they were going to bring friends, bring family to the caucuses tomorrow to try to increase his vote. And of course, he was unknown until this election started. So it really is, at the moment, anyone's game.
Do we know at all if he has addressed his alleged links with Ukraine, which has been the subject of President Trump's impeachment?
Yeah, he has really kind of ignored that issue along the way. He has said, when he has made comment on it, that there have been several several inquiries and several high-level people and high-level inquiries completely debunk these claims that Donald Trump and his administration have made, proving that Joe Biden and his son Hunter did absolutely nothing wrong, were not involved in corruption in Ukraine. It has been proved to be a myth over and over again, and that is all that Joe Biden has really said on the matter. He said, look, this isn't true, so I'm not going to talk about it because it's not true. So yeah, he has not been using that as part of his campaign. What he is saying, though, is that there needs to be, he believes, someone in opposition to Donald Trump who knows the lay of the land, who has experience in office. He's saying that he's the only candidate with the experience and the knowledge of how things work to truly be an opposition to Donald Trump, whereas other candidates are saying the opposite, that is not what you need. If we're going to defeat Donald Trump, we need a new way of thinking, a new way of doing politics, and that's what they're campaigning on.
You know, reports are now emerging that his campaign has been disorganized, his debate performances uneven, and his speech has become so long-winded and stamped, and they've been delivered to small and graying crowds. And those who know him believe that he is actually slowing down. But what does he really stand for? What is his trump card in his election campaign?
Yes, certainly there has been a lot of criticism that he appears to be slower, that perhaps he forgets things. He's made a few serious blunders on stage at debates and so on, saying things that weren't true, making mistakes, and that has been, his critics have pounced on those things. But he's also, we understand now that he has always suffered from a stutter, a speech impediment through his life, and that perhaps lends some understanding as to why perhaps he occasionally makes mistakes in public speaking settings. But yes, a lot of people pointing to his age. He's in his late 70s. And they say, his critics say that he is too old and not mentally and hourly strong enough to perform as president. He dismisses all of that. And as I said, his response to that is, look, I may be older, but that just gives me all this wealth of experience to fall back on, not just with domestic politics, but on the international stage as well. He talks about his foreign policy credentials a lot. Of course, he was working for President Obama, closely with him when he did things like negotiate the Iran deal, the trade deals with the rest of the world. He travelled with the president to many, many countries. He says in his stump speech that he believes he's met with just about every international world leader. So his response to critics who say that he's too old is, with age brings experience, and that is just what we need to defeat Donald Trump.
But then, is he receiving the necessary support from the Democratic camp, especially the elitist Democratic camp, and as well as, some of the former presidents? I mean, do we know for sure if any endorsements are coming forth?
Well, so far, former President Barack Obama has not endorsed any of the candidates, which, if you're Joe Biden, perhaps you would have liked that. You know, they worked closely together for many years, but he hasn't received that endorsement. But Barack Obama has been pretty quiet on all fronts during this election campaign so far. It will be interesting to see, once we get the Iowa results, whether he will decide to say anything. But yeah, I think that the DNC are perhaps, that's a Democratic National Campaign, so the national organizing committee for the Democrats, if you like, they have perhaps got concerns by the rise of the more progressive wing of the party. They have traditionally been much more moderate, more centrist, like Joe Biden is. They have perhaps concerns that the likes of Bernie Sanders, who's very far to the left, he has a huge following here in Iowa, and he has got a lot of support nationally. Of course, he was defeated by Hillary Clinton in 2016, but he's back again this year. And there is perhaps concern from the National Committee that the party is going too far left for their liking.
And having forged a very close relationship with former President Barack Obama, so what kind of role does the Obama era play in his campaign?
Well, it still does play a role. For example, last night, Pete Buttigieg on stage at this rally, he's only 38 years old. Barack Obama also was very young when he ran for president and won. So Pete Buttigieg, although he didn't name Barack Obama by name, was suggesting that, a young person with lots of energy and new ideas is what this country needs. He was kind of mirroring some of the language that was used by Barack Obama when he first ran in 2008. And then, of course, yes, you've got Joe Biden, who during all his stump speeches always talks about his friend Barack Obama, who he works so closely with. He talks about Barack Obama a lot and uses that in his campaigning. So there is, even though Barack Obama has kept quiet so far, he is still part of this campaign. He was the most successful Democrat, 2 terms in office as president. So yes, it's not a surprise really that his time in the White House is part of this campaign this time round as well.
All right, Kate Fisher, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. That was our correspondent, Kate Fisher, speaking to us live from Iowa.